Okay, well, good morning. Welcome to the Zoom session. Joey and I made a point of having it be somewhat impromptu, and of course it can't quite be impromptu the second way around, but it will have the same kind of character, I think. So we'll ring the bowl and we will take a deep breath and we will settle into our space. Joey will light the chalice. When he asked me to do this, I was thinking that it was my philosophical wisdom that he was impressed with. Actually, that's not the case. It turned out to be he liked the poems that I chose. So I picked two poems which seemed to me to be really appropriate for this circumstance. One poem about the way not to do it, and then one poem about the way to do it. So first comes the poem about how not to do it, entitled To Joey About His Education. The world is full of mostly invisible things, and there is no way but putting the mind's eye or its nose in a book to find them out. Things like the square root of Everest, or how many times Byron goes into Texas, or whether the law of the excluded middle applies west of the Rockies. For these and the like reasons, you have to go to school and study books and listen to what you are told, and sometimes try to remember. Though I don't know what you will do with the mean annual rainfall on Plato's Republic, or the calorie content of the diet of worms. Such things are said to be good for you, and you will have to learn them in order to become one of the grown-ups, who sees invisible things neither steadily nor whole, but keeps gravely the grand confusion of the world under his hat, which is where it belongs, and teaches small children to do this in their turn. Second poem is entitled, You Can Take It With You. Two little boys who live next door to this house are on their trampoline. The window is closed, so they are soundless. The sun slants and is going away, but now it hits full on the trampoline, and the small figure on each end alternately, they fly up to the sun, fly and rebound, fly or shot up, fly or shot up, up. One comes down in the lotus position, the other outdone somersaults in air. Their hair flies too, nothing can keep them down. The air sucks them up by the hair of their heads. I know all about what it is happening in the city at just this moment. Every last grain of dark I can see, but what I see now is the two little boys flung up, the sun snatching them, their mouths rounded in gasps. They are there, they fly up. So when Joey asked me if I would assist him in his preaching process, I didn't really know who he was. I mean, I recognized him and knew his name, but I never really talked with him. But I was happy to do it. It is certainly an honor to be asked to do something like this. And then we had the session prescribed by the UU rules. We do actually have some rules, not very many of them. And they said to ask about these things. And so I did. And I found him to be a most interesting and most thoughtful young man. And I was quite pleased that I had had the opportunity to assist in this ritual. So Joey has some things that he wants to talk about, and I give the floor to him.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, hi. As well as many other endeavors that I've had, I particularly love photography. I feel like I can tell great stories. I feel like I can express emotion clearly, things that I am thinking through photography, through my photos. So I don't actually have a paper. Oh, I forgot mine.
Oh, I have one
Well,
here.
oh, you do?
Yes.
Oh, that's great.
There you go.
Thank you. Okay. So how are we going to show these? There we go. Okay. So this first photo is a photo of my younger sibling. They go by Nico nowadays. I call them Little, so I'll be calling them that throughout. But the first picture is one that my mom took a while back when they were, I think, around 5 or 6, and this was right before Halloween. They had just dressed up in their favorite Disney character, Elsa from Frozen, and we had made that costume ourselves. It was a mom and dad endeavor, and I love that photo just because you can't really see it, but she was very excited to do this, to do Halloween. This is one of the first times they had ever had a costume made this well. It had always been store-bought before, but yeah, I love seeing this photo of them so young. And in the middle is a photo that I took of them when they wanted to be a small-time actress. And we were taking modeling photos. There you go. And this is one of the ones that I believe I captured outside in our backyard. And I really love just the look that she's giving, and it's a bit of a grimace more than anything, but it really does capture childhood, very innocent look, very, I feel like she has a very insightful look in her eyes. But a couple of years later, I took a photo on a hike near Cades Cove, and this was after they had come out to me as non-binary instead of going by they them and changed their name. And this photo really, I feel like, embodies their maturity, because not only is it a more sultry expression, a bit of a more quote unquote grown up look, it's just the foliage and the way that they are looking at the camera, the way the light is hitting it, that I thought was gorgeous. I thought the colors were amazing. And I thought that they had finally settled into themselves and were able to not necessarily have to smile and show that they are happy, because I know, as someone who took the photo, that they were happy in this moment and they were happy with themselves. They didn't feel like they were faking anything. I love capturing that moment. Looking to the other side, we have some pictures of my my high school and middle school best friend, Ethan. He's one of my greatest supporters. He has been there for me since about 7th grade. We've not really grown up together, but we've spent a lot of life together. This first photo I took about 2 years ago. 3 years ago now, actually. I was 14, he was 15, and we had taken a umbrella from the Lost and Found and went into the high school gym showers and turned them on and thought this would look cool. And I didn't have my camera on me, so I just took this with my phone, and it looked great. First try, it really looked great. But he still looked young, and that whole process of finding what you have around you, making do with what you have in your area at that moment, really, I feel like, not only embodies creativity but our childhood, because we kind of made do with what we had around us and made something great out of it. He is one of my biggest supporters. He supported me in every endeavor that I've had. The next 2 photos are us very recently, taken about 4 days ago, and we went to Victor Ash to play frisbee golf and take photos. And just, I thought that these two photos, one of them showing right now, but these photos really embody his maturity. He not only looks like an adult, but he speaks more like an adult. He is very much, he's very good with his words, unlike me. He's very insightful, and he gives me a lot of good words of encouragement, words of wisdom to basically tell me to keep going. You know, whatever creative endeavors, creative pursuits that I have, he will never tell me that it's a bad idea, never tell me to stop. He's always been there. Yeah, that's all. That's it. Thank you.
So the next part of this process, we got the directions from the UU manual to find out about the person, which is when I learned how interesting a person Joey was, which I didn't know before, and asked some standard questions about growing up and so on. And then we thought that the way this should work, which is truer to UU ethos, is to try to recreate the conversation, except not with just the questions that we had asked before, but with some new ones. Well, they won't be new this time because Joey has heard them already in the live session. But that means he's had one chance to kind of think about them a little bit, and we'll see how the conversation goes from there. So the conversation begins not at all rehearsed, and this is not because we're lazy, it's because a conversation, to really be a conversation, has got to be impromptu. It will go where its own energy tells it to go. So the first question is pretty obvious, Joey. You know, what do you expect to happen next, and what do you hope after you leave high school?
Well, I am taking a gap semester, I suppose. I won't be going back to school until spring. However, I do want to attend Pellissippi, and I want to study psychology. And eventually, I do want to become a therapist or practice therapy or psychiatric medicine, one of them. Yeah, that's what I've wanted to do for the past couple of years now. I'm fascinated by the human mind, by the human condition as a whole. And, you know, dealing with mental health problems myself, I want to be able to help other people, you know, the same way that I've gotten help. And I know how it feels to not have help and to feel like you haven't had that. And I want to be able to aid. I want to be able to give back in that sort of way.
Joe, you actually never mentioned to me before that you had mental health problems. You kind of alluded to it,
Yeah.
but you never mentioned it. If this is not something that you want to talk about here, then simply say no. But could you give us an outline of how this manifested itself for you?
Well, I have pretty bad anxiety. I don't really like talking to people that much. I don't really like public speaking, especially is hard. But I do enjoy it whenever, you know, it's around people that I trust, especially people at the church. Other than that, I have, you know, they're bugging me. Yeah, I mean, I have pretty standard, you know, depression and what I'm trying to say, like self-confidence issues. Never really seen myself in a very good light. Other than that, there's not too much that I want to go too much deeper into, but
Yeah, that's fine.
that's a pretty good outline, I would say, of what goes on in my head.
I never would have guessed that. I have not seen any anxiety in the times which is actually now a fair amount of time we spent together. I would like to make one comment.
Mhm.
Anxiety is not totally a bad thing.
I have come to learn that, especially, you know, going through high school and not being in person has kind of made me realize that the anxiety that I felt amongst other kids, amongst other people, was not nearly as bad as the anxiety that I felt being alone. and having to do school, having so many more assignments, having more to deal with. I feel like the type of anxiety that I experienced, it wasn't as a whole very bad. It was, yeah.
I mean,
I agree.
there's a variation on a bad joke. If you're never anxious, you're just not paying attention.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. So do you expect to grow up, get married, move into the middle class, buy a house in the suburbs, or, I mean, do you think that's a likely possibility, or are you going to really work at going in a different direction?
It is a likely possibility, but that is if I don't necessarily work in a different direction, which I would like to, because I have never been a very big fan of the, two kids and a dog, white picket fence, two-story house in the suburbs sort of deal, because, well, for one, I never lived that, and two, it's not a type of life that I idolize. I like having freedom. I like having the ability to have an adventure in my own yard, especially speaking, physically.
Mhm.
Not a lot of space in a suburb, so it's nicer to have, more open areas, more access, walking access, especially to other areas, where I can really take in nature, especially. I love nature. I love trees. So no, I don't necessarily want to join the middle class, but if that's the minimum that I can do, then I'll take it.
And how about the getting married or whatever the version of that is 10 years from now and getting kids?
Married part, yeah, I would like to at some point. Whether that is in the next 10 years or not is, I don't necessarily know that, but I would like to. I'd like to find anyone, and be able to settle down at some point, because I don't want to be crazy all the time.
So I didn't ask this before last time. Since being a kid is not very recently for yourself, what kinds of things, if you do have children, if you do have kids, do you most want to see in them or most fear seeing in them?
What I most fear seeing in my kids is the same issues that I had, growing up. It is like not being confident in yourself, not seeing yourself the way that I see them. And of course, there's no way that I can really stop that, but it is something I'm fearful of. And I'm fearful of really even my siblings or sibling getting sucked into a world that doesn't exist, speaking on terms of like the internet. I feel like so many younger kids nowadays, that's all they do, because that's all they've really known. I feel like there's so much negativity out there on the internet that you can get sucked into and that you can be enthralled in.
It's interesting. I thought it was just old people like me who have that kind of fear.
Well, because I had experienced so much of that firsthand, being on the internet as early as I was, which is not as early as some older folks, but I mean, especially early into social media, it was hell, to put it bluntly. I wouldn't wish any of that on anyone else. That's my biggest fear in my kids. But what I would want for them is to give them a love and appreciation for nature and the world around them. And I would, make them go outside every day for at least an hour, just to get outside air, because we all need that. We all need an appreciation for the outdoors. Plenty of car trips, plenty of, walking around the neighborhood, if that's the least that we can do, that's what I want to do. I want to give my children that sort of life. A lot more detached.
So back kind of on script again, what's the best thing that you can imagine happening to you as your life gradually unscrolls?
The best thing that I can imagine happening to me is, I worded this differently during the live session, but I think the best way that I can word it is just to be more carefree. Because even nowadays, I don't really have payments, but I'm always sort of stressed about, is the money that I'm saving up now for my future going to be enough? Or
You know, how am I going to be able to make this future car payment? Or, you know, am I saving up enough for college? Am I doing this right or that right? My idyllic, you know, future would be I wouldn't have to worry about that. And I would just be free to think. And, you know, living in a capitalist world, it makes you think like that. And in order to be carefree, you have to essentially have money to be carefree. And that would be, you know, ideal for me, but I mean, it's obviously not ideal for everyone else.
Well,
I
it
would
may
like to
be,
be
they just
carefree.
don't know it, that's all.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the main thing. I would love to be able to just sort of return to childhood in my adulthood and not have to worry as much, even as I am now. That would be perfect for me.
And the natural corollary, what is the worst thing that could happen?
The worst thing, yeah, I think I said it the best earlier, be losing my creativity as a whole. And I've gone through bouts of, you know, not being creative due to one reason or another, not being able to think, you know, everyone has a block of some sort, but to sort of fall into such a monotonous schedule and such a, you know, routine that I don't have time, that I can't make time for myself to, you know, go shoot photos or go make music or read or draw or even drive. You know, if I can't do anything like that, and I'm just, you know, I have like an office job or always inundated with papers and things to do. If I don't have time to be creative, the worst thing that I can imagine happening.
Does your creativity come more from when you're alone by yourself or when you're with other people?
It depends. Whenever I'm shooting photos or listening to music, because I love music. Whenever I'm listening to music or shooting photos of things that, you know, around me, like nature or cityscapes or street photography, anything like that, I'd rather be alone. I feel more creative, more empowered to think freely on my own. But on the flip side of that, if I'm making music for somebody, or I'm listening to music with somebody, or I'm shooting pictures of friends of mine or, you know, clients, people that I've met off the internet that like my work, I want to work with them. And so if I can have joint creativity with someone else, that it's a whole another feeling than just individual creativity. I appreciate the both of them. So I can't necessarily say that I feel more creative in one scenario than the other. I appreciate them both pretty equally.
I want to shift to some more public things.
Mhm.
So the boards and so on that run West Side are made up of us old people, you know, who are harder to recognize what's happening.
Yeah.
Would you like a voice in this, or do you have, you know, other young people who you think could really give a voice and would have a different voice than the people who are doing it at the moment?
I think so. And I think that a lot of the people here that we have on the board, you know, aren't, I wouldn't say are necessarily stuck in their ways. I'd say that they're more pliable than some other old people, you know, at different sorts of churches. But I think younger ideas, not necessarily younger ideas, but other ideas could be introduced with younger people. And especially, I feel like younger people of color should be more, not necessarily represented in the church, because they are, but more attracted to the church. I feel like we should be putting ourselves out there more.
Yes, you said something about advertising the last time.
And I don't want to advertise. That's kind of an unspoken rule. But I feel like putting ourselves out there more, you know, going to different events, you know, going to, I know we didn't have Pride this year, but, you know, if we were to go to some sort of rally or some sort of, you know, get together with other like-minded people and sort of attract them to our church. Yeah, I think not only would it make a positive impact to our church, you know, your attendance more, you know, people will know about us, but we'd also have a lot more diversity within the board because people are sure to, you know, become a part of that and express their ideas. That's what I would think.
And the last set of questions regarding your grandmother, who I like so much. And I asked about her, and I told your parents I didn't want to exclude them, but I wanted the ends of the spectrum
Mhm.
kind of thing. What kinds of things, it's a trick question, of course, but
Yeah,
what
of
kinds of
course.
things does she know that you just don't?
Lots of things. Well, with her being a library and so, engrossed in literature, she has a lot of that floating around in her head. And, obviously her knowing more about, things like that, things from her generation, that's, those are things that I would like to ask her about. I would like to ask her about how her life was coming up, especially in religion and in those times, and how she came of age with being so, I don't want to say into, but so into books and so, reading so much. I know that kind of goes into the next question, but I had to say that.
Yeah, and then the flip side of it is, so what do you know that she doesn't? What would you like her to ask you? I mean, really seriously ask, Joey, here's something I just don't know about, and I would like you to tell me about it.
Well, I can't really say what she would be curious about that I would know.
No, the point is not, it's what she doesn't know to be curious
Right,
about.
yeah. What does she not know to be curious about? I keep moving this. That's fair. Well, man, what would I like her to ask? That's a good question.
It is a good question, yes.
Well, I don't know. Something that I've known firsthand is something like the modern music industry.
Okay.
Having worked with local artists, trying to get them, signed to labels, working with people to, have them become not only popular, but be able to get their ideas out there. That's something that, I feel like I'm knowledgeable enough about to have someone ask me. And it's a lot more different than it was. That doesn't sound right. It's different than how it was even 10, 15 years ago. It, you know things like that with technology are advancing slowly over time, or actually in this case very rapidly. Things are a lot different than they were even when I started making music 5 or 6 years ago. Not on a professional level, but yeah. But I feel like that's something I could give some insight into.
Good. So Wendy, do you have any last things you want to say?
Not really, except for I am just thankful for you guys for being here. Thankful for you to attend this. It feels very good. It warms my heart and it feels very good. So thank you.
So Wendy, we don't have the actual ritual of bridging at this point. So is there a chat session that's going to follow, or how are we going to proceed from here?
Yes, I was going to just say a little bit, since the people who are viewing it right now don't know about the ceremony, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of bridging, and especially for Joey, who's grown up in this church and has, especially to me, he came around right about the same time I did. So I've gotten to know Westside kind of through him and his family specifically. So but this bridging is really about Joey's movement from the children's religious education program and from being a child in our community to becoming a young adult and moving into adulthood. And so when we do the ritual, we actually have a little bridge that Joey would walk across, and you'll see again in the video. But on one side, the side that Joey would start on, are all the children that were present that are in the adult or in the children's religious exploration program. And he would start there and then make his way across the bridge. And on the other side, the adults, including his bridging mentor, David Howell, and his family and some other representatives from the community would be on that side to welcome him into the adult role in our congregation now. Not that he's expected to be an adult as soon as he crosses that bridge, but that we recognize that he's in a process and that we are committed to this process of growth and becoming a full-fledged adult in the Unitarian Universalist congregation. So when he crosses the bridge, we greet him with a rose, which actually has thorns on it, which symbolizes that we are here for him for all the beautiful moments and all of the difficult moments, right? The rose has the beautiful smell and that just the beautiful blossom, but it also has the thorns, and that just represents the wholeness of life, right? And that we accept Joey through all of those phases, and that we're here for him and his family at any, through every different part of life, the joys and the sorrows, as we know. And so that's really the fullness of that ceremony, and it is again a commitment to Joey and other young adults who have crossed that bridge, who have bridged into adulthood and are still growing up. And aren't we all still growing up? So it's a commitment we make to ourselves as a community to continue to grow together, to be there together for the hard times and the good times. And I just wanted to also mention that for anyone who has had a bridging mentee in the past, this would be a beautiful time to reach out and just make that connection again and welcome them back in. Or maybe they're home from school, or maybe they're grown adults now and they have jobs and families, and it would be a wonderful time just to make a contact again and remember, and to let them know we're thinking of them and that they're still a part of our hearts and a part of our community, whether or not they have the time or they're living somewhere else now. But so this is an ongoing commitment we make. It's not just the day of bridging, it's through the whole lifespan. So thank you, Joey, for bringing us this opportunity to celebrate you and to celebrate our community as well. And
Of course.
with that, we like to do our closing words. And I just wanted to say, Joey, thank you so much for leading the way for us. You are a way shower in your own way, and for expressing your creativity, sharing who you are, and allowing us the great honor of watching you grow and learn and become who you ultimately will be as an adult here at Westside.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.